We now look into the escalating humanitarian crisis in Sudan, a situation that not only poses a direct threat to regional stability, but also raises pressing questions about the security implications for the entire African continent. In the past, we've witnessed armed conflict erupting between the rival factions within Sudan, leading to widespread violence, displacement, and an alarming humanitarian situation. Reports indicate that thousands are dead while millions are displaced, with countless more facing dire conditions. Sudan's state of affairs is not just a local issue. It serves as a stark reminder of how internal conflict can spiral into broader regional threats. Critics have also argued that many African leaders are too occupied with their own internal issues, often prioritizing political survival over decisive action. In crises like Sudan, the paralysis undermines the unity and effectiveness of regional bodies, and it also illustrates a broader systemic failure, a lack of actionable strategies to foster diplomacy and peacekeeping where they are desperately needed. Now, join us to discuss this. We're joined by Vhahangwele Tsotesi, political analyst. He joins us from Gauteng in South Africa. Warm welcome to you, Vhahangwele, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we'd like to know your assessment of the Sudanese crisis in terms of its immediate security threats, and not just for Sudan, but the Horn of Africa region. What specific factors have contributed to its classification as a security threat? We do know that this conflict has been ongoing for about 2 years now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The conflict actually erupted in April of 2023, where we're seeing the rival factions, which are between the Sudanese armed force and going against the rapid force, support force of Sudan. So what we're seeing that it's a power struggle between the two military forces. So now the problem that we see right now in the Horn of Africa is that since from then, we've seen a number of Sudanese actually displaced, from their homes, and the exact number we're talking about 11 million of Sudanese actually displaced, and over 30 million of Sudanese are actually in need for humanitarian needs. And now what we're seeing that it's not only the issue that Sudan is actually experiencing. So this particular problem, it has the potential to actually spill over to toward the whole of Africa, particularly in neighboring countries like Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan.
Now, Vhahangwele, just earlier this week, just a few days ago, the United States State Department announced sanctions against one of the belligerents in this conflict, Mohammed Abdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti. How far do you think those sanctions will go, and will it change anything on the ground, as we speak, with regards to peace in Sudan?
I don't think the sanctions that the United States actually we're talking about will actually change anything, particularly for people in the ground. As I highlighted that the war is done. We're actually experiencing it's the worst humanitarian crisis that we have ever had in history. And what's also shocking is that in terms of media coverage, it's actually quite limited. You see, so when you talk about the issues of sanctions, they actually do little for the people on the ground, because also we must note that the conflict in Sudan, there are actually external forces that are involved in this conflict. I mean, we're talking about Russia, we're talking about the UAE, we're talking about Egypt, that are actually they have interest in Sudan. it's rich in oil. Sudan is rich, in minerals. It's rich in gold. So when you talk about, sanctions, they're actually not going to work. Particularly looking at the people on the ground, in specific reference to women and children who are actually, undergoing or enduring violence, in these affected areas.
You're welcome back. We still have Vhahangwele join us from Gauteng in South Africa discussing the crisis in Sudan. Now, Vhahangwele, we've often heard this word, African solutions to African problems. The African Union has been criticized for its lack of decisive action regarding the Sudan crisis. What do you think are the reasons for this perceived inaction? Is it a matter of political will, resources, or something else? Why haven't we been able to fix Sudan?
I mean, when we talk about, the case of peace and security within the entire African continent, it's always a combination of various factors. And as you mentioned, we're talking about limited resources, we're talking about also political will. And also, I think it's very important to highlight that most of the funding that the African Union that it has in its disposal is from external factors. You see, so now the African Union really, we often see a lot of conferences, summits, and so forth. They always fail to act on their resolutions. You see, and also I think what's actually preventing the African Union from mediating in such conflict zone, it's because of the complexity of the conflict. You see, because where we have the two armed forces where they are actually prioritizing military victory over peaceful resolutions, and also the major powers who are involved in this conflict, they actually make the whole peace talks and solutions very, very difficult. And as I highlighted before that, you have Russia, you have UAE, you have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and and other external forces that are involved in this conflict, and they are actually supporting either of the armed forces, because they are trying to protect their interests. So it becomes very difficult, for the regional body to actually mediate in this certain conflict. And also, interestingly, is that Sudan itself, they don't fully recognize the African Union as an authoritative body, which is add to the complexity.
Thank you so much, Vhahangwele Tsotesi. It was a pleasure speaking to you on this subject. Thanks for your insights and contribution.
Yes.